Right. I think they are also coming up with two offices, one in Bangalore, another in NCR. Correct?
Delhi. Yeah,
Delhi.
right, right. So we also had that option. They were just planning it out when the office was opening up, but I think it depends on your team and your manager. So the team that they hire for from SNU so far, which is a financial research team, that team is still completely based out of Hyderabad. So
Okay.
there is an option, but really depends on your team. You might just have to, the base might have to be Hyderabad after all.
Okay.
But yeah, the flexibility is definitely there to work from home and stuff. So.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think we have like six of them
Yeah,
here, right? So
everyone?
no,
Okay.
not everyone. I think we
So we
have a
can
few
start?
more. Some of them will not be able to join. I think one boy has
Okay,
will
sure.
not be able to join. And so Sanjana, you wouldn't mind if we record this session, right? So we can just
Hmm.
can get back to this recording later.
Sure, sure.
So you
I
can
mean, I
start.
haven't really prepared. I was just going to candidly, hmm. But sure, go ahead.
I think we can start. Divya, we have Saurabh, Samita, Varda, Manika, and Anushka.
Okay.
So Sanjana, I think they have like all quite excited about the interview process on Monday, and at the same time they are a little worried because of
Hmm.
course they want to make it please, right? So if you can share
Yeah,
your
definitely.
experience,
Yeah,
yes, how did you prepare for the
sure.
interview? What all questions? I mean, like you
Hmm.
were asked because the role is the same, and what is it that they can expect,
Hmm.
and how should they prepare themselves? And then I think they can all have their own questions. They can ask you those
Sure,
questions.
definitely. Right. So I'll just summarize how my interview process was. That should answer most of their questions. I'll just plug in how I prepared and stuff into that. And then, of course, if you guys have any questions, then feel free to ask me. And if there's a lag or a connection problem anywhere, just interrupt me, okay? So I took my interviews back in, I think, March to May of 2021. My interview process entailed 3 rounds of interviews, which were with different people from the management. Your interviews will most likely be with either an AD or a senior manager or a manager. It could even be a panel of multiple people and not just one person. So my first, second, and third interview, I wouldn't say that they were exceedingly tough or like they were very specific in their nature. Ki one was a technical round or one was an HR round. It was nothing like that. All 3 interviews kind of felt the same to me, except they were with different people of the management, and they were all very, very conversational in nature, right? So, from my experience, the conversations, the interviews are not going to be of the sort where, a panel is sitting, asking you questions, hard questions, and they just expect an answer from you. You have to just maintain that skill of being able to carry the conversation, right? And with that comes a very, very important factor in taking interviews, which is driving the conversation the way you want to drive it. So, when it comes to the content of the interviews and what really needs to be prepared, there are 2 or 3 things that I focused on, and I realized that it actually really helped me. So, the first thing was knowing my own resume very, very well, right? So, like I mentioned, interviews are very, very conversational. So you have certain liberty in driving the conversation the way you want to, right? Obviously, it makes us feel confident, talk about the things that, we know a lot about, or things that, we have done our research properly in. So I made sure I was working on my thesis when my interviews were happening, my undergraduate thesis, and I was doing it on some macroeconomical concept, and it was very, very data driven. I had looked for that data myself, I had worked on that data using our studio myself, and I felt confident talking about it. So I made sure that I knew that down to the details, and I made sure to plug it anywhere I could. Whenever I was asked, oh, what are you up to these days, how is your degree going, why is it a 4-year degree? That's a very common question for folks from SNU. So I made sure that I talked about my thesis, because I knew that that is some work that I was proud of and something I could talk about at length, right? So knowing your own resume, knowing what you derived from each and everything that you've listed as your experience, may it be internships or projects or any certain course that you did, make sure that you know your own resume very well in and out. If somebody asks you to talk about anything from your resume for a minute uninterrupted, you should be able to do that. And if you feel confident about certain things or certain work that you've done, make sure to plug that into conversation. And I mean, I can almost guarantee that it will be taken up, considering that the interviews are, nice and conversational. So that is the first thing. Second, coming to what they call technical interviews. Like I mentioned, none of my interviews was purely technical, but definitely D Shaw, being a hedge fund, being a company that's very, heavily financially charged, they do expect you to have certain knowledge of the financial markets, certain knowledge of economics, just, how the markets work and stuff. So people who were hired for me were able to do it. I had done a minor from SMU only in finance, so from math I had that upper hand, but I do have colleagues who are, I even have a colleague who studied zoology, but she got into Shaw purely on the basis that she was really interested in finance. She used to invest and all of that. So, although you will not be expected to know every single detail of how everything works, my suggestion would be do a thorough research on the company, right? So D Shaw has an open website. Do visit the website on Google. One very good thing that they've done is on the very first page, the home page of the D Shaw website, they kind of summarize for a layman what the company does, right? I'll try to summarize that for you as well so you have a better idea. But it definitely helps to see a candidate who knows the company well, right? So knowing how the company works, right? And how exactly do they make money? What kind of investment are they actually interested in? That kind of stuff really helps. One question that I remember from my own interview where this came in handy was, even though my interview was going very conversational, not very technical, my interviewer randomly asked me, "Oh, you keep saying hedge fund, hedge fund. What is the difference between a hedge fund and a private equity fund?" And the reason I knew that answer was simply because I had done the research on what D-Shaw does and how is it different from its own competitors. When you talk about investment or investment banks, you have so many names. You have Goldman Sachs, you have these big names, JPM and whatnot, right? But how is DE Shaw different from them? How is their business different from them? How will their requirements from an employee be different from these other companies, right? So the only reason I could answer that question about what a private equity fund does or what an IB does was simply because I knew what Shaw does, right? So if you visit the website, definitely that will be really, really helpful. But just to summarize it in a nutshell for you, a hedge fund is like a mutual fund, but for extremely rich accredited investors. When we say accredited, we basically mean elite investors who do not invest in small amounts. They have huge funds that they want a fund manager to manage and invest for them, right? So it's kind of a machine to make the rich people more rich, right? So that's what a hedge fund does. Accredited investors, which could be institutions or very, very wealthy individuals, would invest their money in Shaw, and Shaw, on their behalf, would invest that money elsewhere, get the returns, and get a cut on it, right? How this differs from investment bank is investment bank functions a lot on the sell side of things. They take up companies, help them release their IPOs. They have varied functions and not just investing and earning money off of it, which is the only function of a hedge fund, right? Private equity fund, again, private equity means you take money from private entities, which could be individuals or institutions. But again, it doesn't have that condition of being accredited investors. Accredited investors are a very elite, thin class of people who are basically eligible to even invest in a hedge fund, right? So that is what DE does. How they do it is divided into two branches. There is systematic trading and there is discretionary trading. You will find this all on their website. Systematic trading, so D Shaw calls themselves a finance plus tech company. And the reason for that is they use a lot of quantitative strategies that employ algorithm and codes and programming languages to make trades for them, right? So when high frequency trading happens, you sell and buy something within a matter of seconds. It can get you a huge profit if you're investing in the kind of amounts that Shaw invests in or any like accredited investor who will invest in. So basically, systematic trading entails machines trading on your behalf on the basis of an algorithm or on the basis of a program that you have written for the machine. And discretionary trading is when human intervention comes in. It is discretionary. There is a panel of people sitting, deciding, calling the shots that, okay, this is a trade we're going to make and this is a trade we're not going to make. Those are the two broad kind of strategies, I would say, that Shaw follows to invest and earn money, right? Within these, there are, I don't know, I can think of maybe 10 or 20 different strategies. This is obviously subdivided into the kind of categories. You can invest in equities, you can invest in debt, you can invest in asset backed securities, you can invest in real estate. That is just a myriad, like a plethora of things, right? So I'm not going to get into that since it would be too technical, but you should have a basic understanding of what Shaw does and how it does it. So I've tried to summarize that. Definitely go on their website. Definitely feel free to talk to any other employees from Shaw if you would just like to understand the work better, right? So yeah, I would say the second kind of broad thing that really helped me with my interview was knowing Shaw inside out. And how I like to do it was I just pick up a piece of paper. I divide the piece of paper into two, three, I would say sections, and I make one for my resume, one for the company I'm interviewing for. Okay, so those are the two things that I covered. The third thing that I would say I kind of prepped and again ended up helping me was just having a general idea of current affairs, right? So when I was taking one of my interviews, the government budget had just come out. Obviously, COVID had hit us all a year before that. So there were definitely questions revolving around, how do you think this was specifically one question in my interview. How do you think COVID has affected the government budget this time? How do you think that has been factored for? And what would you say about that? So for stuff like this, it is very common for interviewers to pick up a topic that is highly relevant right now, something that has recently happened. So definitely read up on a few current affairs. Try to correlate how that relates to the market. How would that affect the market in a financial sense? How is that event or that phenomenon really relevant? That is the kind of last thing that I would say should brush up over. Of course, when it comes to general knowledge and current affairs, you can't go through everything, right? So just skimming should be fine. But in terms of technicality, know the company, know your resume. One more thing I would say is I'm not sure how many of you are working on your undergraduate thesis right now, or how many of you have worked with maybe not exactly coding languages, but data driven languages like maybe R or Python. You are not expected to know any of this, right? Even after 1 year into the firm, I am still learning. I'm trying to learn Python, but that is completely on me. It's not like the firm requires me to do it. If you require any of these technical skills, the firm will train you for it. But it definitely helps to have an understanding of data. So, like I mentioned, I talked about my thesis quite a lot in my interviews. So, when I did start talking about my thesis, the first thing that would come up is where did you hunt for the data? How did you manipulate the data? How did you make it fit? Do you think you made the right choice? Stuff like that. And I also had at least two or three case study kind of lengthy questions that were based around data and statistics. Stuff like, suppose you have the GPS data of a certain city, or say just a certain, just small section of a city, or one market. You have the GPS data of every individual that steps into that market. You have that entire data. Which business can you sell this to and how would you sell it? That was a question in my interview, right? So all you need to know here is the power of data. How can certain data be useful to people? So how I answered this question was, if I have GPS data, I know which person, I can track people's spending habits. I can track people's, how much they're moving outside the house, because GPS is now on your phones. It's not just in your cars, right? So you can see how individuals are moving. So I was like, I can pitch it to businesses with strategies about, if I see trends, okay, this is a certain shop where people are going a lot, right? You study their marketing pattern and you advise it to others, right? Or you pitch that data set in a sense that, oh, you know what, I can track your footfall. I can track your footfall with this GPS data, and we have numbers. We can see how that goes up or down with any kind of promotion that we're doing. Or and I don't remember my exact answer, but I hope you get the gist, right? So this question was just completely driven around data and how data can be used for different things, and how it's kind of omnipresent, right? So since this role, I'm not sure which role they're coming to hire for, but the role they were hiring for at my time was a financial research associate in the data analytics team, right? And everybody I know from SNU who's working with me now and are my colleagues, we are all in data analytics. So you need to, it definitely helps, gives you an edge above others to have a good grasp of, how data works, how it can be useful, and all the different kinds of data, actually, not just numbers, even qualitative data. So yeah, that is the last thing that I can think
Sanjana,
of.
it's the same
Um,
profile, I think.
yeah.
Sorry, sorry to
Okay.
interrupt
Great.
you. It's the same profile, so you can just
Great.
add on
I
to
think I have summarized everything I could recall. Other than this, definitely work on your soft skills. Like I mentioned, the interviews are quite conversational. So it helps if you're able to carry that conversation, with confidence, and just be able to maneuver the conversation in a nice and productive, fruitful manner. So yeah, that's where your soft skills come in my opinion. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
And students, if you have any questions for Sanjana, please ask. Okay, so Sanjana, I have a question.
Sure.
We have students going for the interview who do not
Hmm.
have any background in finance, right? So they probably don't
Okay.
know the ins of finance. Okay, well,
Hmm.
what is your advice to them? How should they prepare themselves? Because I believe they may not be asked questions on finance, right? But
Hmm.
then the general awareness of what is happening around the financial
Hmm.
market and finance as a whole in the country might be helpful if they're able to talk about it.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely, right. So, like I mentioned, I do have colleagues who are from, varied backgrounds. They are people who have never studied finance once in their life. So, I can vouch for the fact that the firm or the interviewing panel will not expect you to, have 100% knowledge of finance. So, the first thing I would say is don't undermine yourself simply because you have not studied finance, right? A lot of us hadn't, and we're still at the firm. So, definitely don't do that. Secondly, most of these people I know who are not from a finance background are people who were very culturally involved in maybe business societies or finance and investment societies or uh, like stuff like that in their colleges, right? So when it comes to these things, even cultural experience counts a lot. If you have been in budgeting teams, if you have been in sponsorship teams, if you have been in any kind of business conclaves, any kind of finance cells, entrepreneurship cells, that really definitely helps, and it counts as your experience with finance or with business as well. And SNU definitely provides a lot of those opportunities. So some of you may have been in that domain. Say you haven't done that either, then I would say stick to the 2 3 kind of things that I mentioned earlier. One, knowing the company well. So that will kind of lead you to a chain, right? When you start searching about the company, you start looking up what the company does, there will be terms. There will be terms that will sound like jargon. It will sound like very complicated terms that you've never heard of. Like I'm sure when I said hedge fund or when I said systematic trading and discretionary trading, it may have been the first time that you heard these terms, right? But make sure to follow that chain. Something you don't understand, Google it, right? There's something in that definition you don't understand, Google that. You will definitely, with these building blocks, you will definitely come down to the simplest form of what you're trying to understand, and then it will all make sense. So doing the research on the company will definitely lead you to have an understanding of at least what the company does. Now, on the GK aspect of things, I think you can pick up any top source. You can pick up FT, you can pick up ET, you can pick up the Hindu business line, business standard or business life. I'm not sure which one is Hindus, but yeah, just maybe try to read a couple of things from on there. If you don't understand something, again, Google, right? So that will just at least make you feel prepared enough that you know the company, you know the company's functioning, and you know the broad financial landscape of the world or at least the Indian economy for now, right? You cannot do a 3 year, people that study finance over 3 years, you can't do a crash course of that in one Sunday, right? So it's better to strategically prepare where you know enough to be able to crack that interview and to be able to talk about, at least the company and the role in confidence. Secondly, I think it would help you guys if I give you a little bit color on what the role is like. Because the work that I do currently a lot of it is actually not related to finance. Because the profile that we are all interviewing for, the profile that you all are interviewing for, it is a financial research profile, right? So how shaw's structure works is that all the traders, they sit in New York, they sit in London, they sit in Hong Kong, and all the work that happens out of the Indian office is research work for them. So if a trader feels that, oh, you know what, I need some information on this market segment, and that will probably aid me in making a trade, right? We do that research work for them. So it's not like having this financial knowledge down to the, the grassroots level is very, very essential for you. What you need to have is that research acumen, that acumen about, being able to figure out what exactly is needed, right? Just as an example, if someone is trying to forecast the sales of plastic, right? You can't do that. You can't just have any data points and do that. But if you know what plastic is made of, you have these three compounds that plastic is made of, and you're able to forecast each of their demand, then you can forecast plastic demand, right? And you can forecast its price as well. So this kind of acumen about being able to like solve problems from a research perspective is going to take you a long way than just financial knowledge. So definitely not being from a finance background does not put you a cut below the others. Just definitely have a basic understanding, like I said, of the company and of the like the economic landscape of the world in general, and you should be good to go. Yeah, that's all. Any other questions? I see Anushka raising her hand. You can go ahead. I don't think anyone else is speaking.
Yeah, hi Sanjana. So we've been mentioned that there are three
Hi.
rounds, Tech 1, Tech 2 and HR round. So
Hmm.
you please elaborate a little bit on that,
Hmm.
like how the rounds will be.
Oh, this is the like the trajectory that's been given to you, that there are three rounds: Tech 1, Tech 2, and HR.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I should have mentioned this in the beginning, probably. My interviews were completely virtual, right? I was at home. I was, in fact, I was infected with COVID during one of my interviews. So there was no chance that we were going to have offline interviews. I do have colleagues who did have offline interviews, people from DU campuses and stuff, and their interview experience was definitely different from mine. So it is likely that what I have summarized for you just now, your interviews may not be identical like this. Like I mentioned, I reached out to the company lots of times asking, is this a technical round? Is this an HR round? And I never got a clear answer simply because none of my rounds were labeled as technical or HR. They were all the same. They were all a mix of technical and HR, right? I'm assuming that if you have been told that you're going to have two techs and one HR round, then you should definitely tweak your preparation accordingly. So in the first and second technical rounds, I don't think there should be much of a difference in terms of the difficulty of the questions that are asked to you, but there could be financial questions, there could be questions on data, there could be questions on research. Now, when I say financial questions, I know that it's too broad, but I think a good place to start, if any of you have studied finance, great for you. You would at least have a basic knowledge of how everything works. If you've studied economics, again, you do have a basic knowledge. You're good to go. But if you have none, then a good place to start would be trying to understand what a company does, and that will lead you to so many other things that will, kind of give you that knowledge. So yeah, if you've been told that there are two technical interviews, then you could expect some hard technical questions instead of it being very conversational in nature. But yeah, I think that's it. In the HR round, like I mentioned, again, know your resume in and out. If you've done any internships, if you've done any projects, seriously just Google HR questions. And so many things come up that make you think about your own experience and your own, work ethics. Stuff like, when have you solved a problem, and in a way that you're proud of, or when was that you faced an obstacle and you had to overcome it, or how do you think the lockdown changed you? stuff like that, right? So just prepare some of these questions. All it does is it makes you ponder on your own experiences, ponder on your own learning that you derive from those experiences, and then honestly, you can tweak that in any manner to fit the answer for any question, right? These are just interview hacks, to be quite honest. But yeah, HR should not be a problem, considering that the HR interviews at the end, it's mostly just to gauge your personality. You make it to the HR interview when they have kind of decided that they like you, if it is eliminating. If it is not eliminating, then everyone will make it. But yeah, HR don't stress about. Technical rounds, yeah, definitely read up about the company and go through major financial sources, I would say. Does that answer your question, Mishka?
Yes, thank you so much.
Uh, some hit, thank
Samhita,
you. Samhita has raised her hand.
Sanjana.
Yeah.
Hello, Sanjana.
Yeah.
I am a math major,
Hi.
and
Hmm.
how much of math can I expect in the technical rounds? How deep does it go?
So, I have colleagues who are math majors. I also have colleagues who have done minors in math. I wouldn't say that being math majors has greatly hindered their interviews, but it has definitely helped. So, like I mentioned, I did not really study math in my undergrad, and I'm doing okay for myself. So I wouldn't say that it is imperative, but there was a time when I was trying to learn SQL. I have colleagues who constantly work with SQL. I have colleagues who constantly work with probability statistics and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure it aids them there. So you can use it as a strength instead of thinking of it in a way that, oh, I'm a math major, not a finance major. Think of it as, knowing, having that knowledge of data and statistics in and out, which puts you a cut above the others. Math, I think, is mostly it's about solving problems and knowing the different paths to be able to solve that problem, which comes in handy anywhere, right? So,
Yes.
I don't think you're going to have any hard mathematical questions in your interview because the job profile as such does not expect that, does not require that, right? If you're expected to hone any mathematical skills, that will happen after the company has hired you, and they will help you hone those skills. They will not expect you to have them already. So mathematical questions, none, to be quite honest.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, sorry, one more thing I would like to add there is, um, even though I said that there may not be any mathematical questions from the interviewing panel, when they look at your resume, they will see that you are a math major, right? So that comes back to the point of knowing your own resume well. If you've listed down, say, 5 courses, the most interesting courses that you've done, I listed down a bunch of my courses in my resume, right? Make sure you know those well. If they ask you, how did this course go? Sounds interesting. What did you study here? Definitely make sure you know that well. If you put down your thesis topic in your resume and you say, no, this is a topic I've done research on, make sure you know that well. So, in that sense, math can come up simply because you are a math major and they will see it right there and they will want to know your experience with it, right? There won't be any mathematical questions out of the blue, but they could always come up considering that, it's literally on your profile. So, that definitely be thought about.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that sums it up. You're welcome.
Hello, one question from my side. Will the interview be
Sure, Rajin.
uh, so? I mean, will the interview be a panel interview or one-to-one interview?
So all of my interviews were one-person interviews. I did not have any panels, but there were people who were being interviewed simultaneously who had panels. So it's quite random. It's not up to me to say. I know a team of at least, considering I'm coming to campus on Monday, I know a team of at least 2 people who's coming, and
Okay.
I'm assuming if they're flying all the way, it's going to be a panel. But don't take my word for it. I'm not sure. Maybe they'll both be taking interviews in separate rooms. I don't know. But yeah, you can expect panels. Always better to prepare talking to a group of people as opposed to one person. So
Yeah. Okay. Got. Thank you so much.
Sanjana, I had a question before Divya would ask the question. See, some of them
Yeah,
they have
sure.
updated their resume, right? So they submitted their resume basis which they were shortlisted, made some changes to their resume
Okay.
even after that, right? What would you suggest? They should carry the resume that they should have submitted, or they should carry the
Oh,
one that they submitted?
For interview.
no, the update version. Change that already has been made handy, but to carry an updated version just in case they ask for one, right?
Right.
So if resume, it would an updated one. And I mentioned that, there were some additions after I made submission, so it might be slightly different from the one that I had submitted earlier. So yeah, I mean for an offline interview, it really helps to carry the latest version of your resume.
ठीक है, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Divya, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, ma'am, I just wanted to ask that will there be any financial case studies given to us in the technical round?
They want to know. And that is the extent of my knowledge on that question because I don't really know what went ahead in the people's interview, but I did not have any kind of lengthy financial case studies. Like I mentioned, the only two things that come to mind in terms of like having lengthier questions would be the question that was on the COVID budget, the sort of back and forth there, and the question about the PS data, and questions about my own thesis, which I kind of need to talk at length about, so I did. But hello, am I audible? If anyone could tell me, because I just joined the meeting back.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, great. I don't know why the meeting got cut off in the middle, so I had to rejoin. Um, where were we?
This was part of
I
the
did not
script.
answer. I was not asked any case studies. Yeah, yeah, case studies, right? I did not have any, so I cannot give you more color on it. But if you feel like you've prepared everything else, then you need to go ahead and practice some YouTube videos or Google if you want. You guys could look up Shaw specific interview, like you look up the Shaw research interview, right? There will be a lot of people on Glassdoor and on Fishbowl who would put up their reviews and the kind of things that were asked to them. A lot of it is noise, so make sure you're reading the right things. But yeah, that may give you some.
Why is not